You want to do the next one?
No, I don't. Good evening. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. We'll call this meeting to order. Do we have anyone? Okay, so we would invite you to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Glad to see that we remember how to do that without a student to lead us. Good evening, Hans. Good to see you, sir. Welcome.
Thanks.
So we don't have a presentation tonight? Or we do?
No, sir, we do not. It was a panel presentation, and a couple of members of the panel informed us that they were not available, and we decided that rather than do an abbreviated version and then come back, and we would just move it. It's not a requirement in that time frame. We have plenty of time.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Superintendent's comments?
I would simply like to comment for those of you who came out this past week. We ran a total of 241 separate staff development classes. We are still taking the data on attendance by location, but having hit a good number of them, they were very, very well attended, and we got a lot of positive feedback from the staff who I think enjoyed the idea that the entire week was devoted to them and to sort of like their self-improvement. And I got lots of positive reports on not feeling the pressure in the middle of the school year that a lesson plan has to be done or something else is coming up after this. After this, you're done. So from here on out, it's all about you. And just the staff were very relaxed and took part in a pretty wide variety. So it was nice to see. It's an interesting model to do it all very last week. We'll see how much of it sticks in August.
Sort of reinforces the point that Mr. Osborne and others have made for a number of years, that we need more staff development days for the
Yes,
team.
sir.
Of course, this isn't the way that we'd like to go about getting them, but great. Minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the last regular board meeting?
Second.
Second. Any questions, revisions, or clarifications? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Citizens' comments. Ms. Harner. In the order that we received them, we would invite you to come to the podium and ask you to limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Brandy Mindius and Kent Thomas. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Brandy Mendish. I'm the Faculty Senate President at Washington High School. And our staff and faculty came up with some needs that was lacking within our faculty. So we got together, sat down, proposed a letter, and one of our staff members is actually here to present it. That's Kent Thomas.
Great.
Step
Thank
back.
you.
Thank you. As educators unite in the most serious and crucial task of serving the children of our community, and with particular interest in supporting the students enrolled in Washington High School, we are petitioning the school board for fiscal support to provide security and services to the children on our campus and in our care. Specifically, to increase our staffing by 2.5 critical positions in order to provide adequate structure and professional expertise to address the many risks and responsibilities high schools face in their day-to-day operations. We ask that the school board provide Washington High School with a school resource officer, an at-risk coordinator, and an additional half guidance counselor, bringing our total counselor number back to 4 full-time positions. Current events have brought us all to the understanding that keeping our community's children safe and cared for during their school day has become increasingly challenging. Although we have instituted every best and proven practice available to us, to include limited access to the building, locked classroom doors, emergency drills, hallway and bathroom monitoring, and staff development provided by local law enforcement officials, the reality is these measures may not be enough. Consequently, we do not want to overlook any method proven to be effective by any other high school in our district, state, or nation. School resource officers, or SROs, have been shown to be an effective and important member of high school staffs by providing additional security, expertise, and professional training in problem solving and emergency management. Therefore, we are seeking a closer and more coordinated link with local law enforcement by having the presence of an officer on our staff. Our national climate, affected by repeated school assaults, uncertain political shifting, economic uncertainty, rampant misuse of opioids, and in our community, an increase in domestic violence and homelessness has created a great deal of stress in our students, which impedes or prevents them from engaging in education. As a staff, we do whatever we can to support these students by providing school supplies, meals at school, food for the weekend, and many times clothing, personal hygiene items, minor health care, and more. Additionally, as young people negotiate their adolescence, even those many without the direct needs listed above, they're sometimes distracted from their learning by anxiety, social issues, depression, and self-doubt. With only 3 full-time counselors, it is impossible to adequately address these needs in our children. Our counselors are responsible at this time for approximately 350 students apiece. Each of our counselors has had to increase their student load by approximately 150 students in order to accommodate to the reduction of support caused by cutting a half position from our staff. The increase in student load has impacted the guidance department's ability to provide consistent individual and personal support to the extent they feel it is needed. Additionally, there are occasions when all counselors, in order to meet the demands of AP testing and accommodated testing practices, have had to be simultaneously out of our building and therefore unavailable. With a projected enrollment of 1,300 students for the 2018-2019 school year, the caseload of each counselor is destined to increase, thereby reducing the time available for individual counseling. In light of these critical needs, we are requesting your support for a 4th full-time counselor position, as well as the addition of an at-risk counselor to manage SAT documentation, specific at-risk intervention, as well as supporting the guidance staff in their pursuit of fulfilling the duties and possibilities of guiding all of our students through their time in high school and toward a healthy and productive future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas and Ms. Munoz. Would you share a copy of that with our board secretary? Thank you. And that was it for, okay.
Mr. Horowitz is going to speak in another
Great.
section.
Consent agenda. Any,
No, sir.
okay, so we have a motion to consider the consent agenda. And and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Any, there was one deletion, is that my understanding?
Yes.
On the, okay. All right, no questions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. That takes us to unfinished business.
Yes, sir.
The board voted at our May meeting to move forward with the sale of 655 McGarry Boulevard pending an acceptable offer to the public auction. We received one for an amount in the total of $2.4 million. We've reviewed it through our legal counsel, and it meets all of the parameters that were set forth by the board. And as we noted in our earlier presentation, the approximate total cost of that facility, both halves of it, was $3 million. In the past 3 years, we've rented it for around $200,000 per year, and selling it at a price point of $2.4 million will essentially have obtained the bus garage, that property, the parking lot, free and clear for our taxpayers. So.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the contract for sale?
So moved.
Second. Questions, comments? Well, Gary, while we don't like to be in the business of being landowners, this proved to be a very good transaction for the citizens of Jefferson County and the school board.
It has.
And you played an instrumental role in encouraging the board to do the due diligence and to pursue this. So thank you for your leadership on this. And I know, Mr. Osborne, you really pushed us looking carefully at this as an option, and both the original purchase and those of us who are worried about buying an albatross. Through a lot of hard work, you proved it to be a good investment. So thank you for your leadership on this. Now, the only question I have is the receipt of funds.
Yes, sir.
You anticipate those going into general revenue at this point?
Yes, sir, although we have set up a separate account code to track that, so it doesn't just get blended in with the rest of the general budget, so that the board can be conscientious about how much of it saves, what it expends it for. So we tracked it into a separate budget account. We anticipate closing prior to July 11th. That's the date that the UFP part of this is. They sold a piece of property down in Florida for tax purposes. They need to close before July 11th, and everything is on track to make that happen.
I'm also reminded a couple of board members were showing our top candidate for the superintendent position 3 years ago. We were taking her around the county and showing her some of our different assets and facilities, and we drove up to the bus garage, and she went, "Oh my God, this is ours."
The old bus garage, because the bus stuck like 8 feet out from it. Wasn't long enough to get an entire bus.
So
I thought they were joking.
yep. So
Oh wow.
Definitely a much nicer place.
Oh wow. Yeah.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Great.
Okay, Mr.
Now, I guess this has something to do with the bus garage too, I assume.
You know, it always seems to have. It's a good thing, though. I mean, we had to go out. We went out to bid for fuel bids, gasoline, premium diesel, motor oil, transmission fluid, antifreeze, and LP gas. And really, what we went out to bid for, and I want to stress this again, is the fact that we went out to bid for the delivery of those things. When we look at the delivery, like the Holtzman is who we are. When we went through this with a committee, and the committee picked out exactly the ones they wanted. Petroleum Traders is big on like they use a lot of tractor trailer trucks and those kind of things, so they can deliver large amounts. So when we get gasoline and when we get diesel, it's in large amounts. We buy it in like 7,200 gallons at a time. So it's a lot of diesel. Now, they can do that. They do not have the trucks or the background to do the fuel oil diesel, the fuel oil, because the fuel oil is to each building when it runs out, before it runs out. So they have to have a process for that. So when we look down the list, Holtzman won that because they were about 6 cents a gallon cheaper than Roach Oil, which would have been the other competitor there. We got no bid from Petroleum Traders. Petroleum Traders, however, were much cheaper on the two large delivery things. So we would like to have Petroleum Traders for gasoline and diesel. It is also who we use today. We use Petroleum Traders for that. We also use Holtzman for the other things that we're bidding out. Now, motor oil is actually not the delivery of, but a price per gallon for motor oil. So we can actually get that locked in. And the same thing for transmission fluid. My goodness, if it costs us $36 for the delivery of it, we'd be in trouble. But it's not the delivery of it, that's the actual cost of it. And the same thing is true with antifreeze. The gas, however, the propane gas is a delivery charge. That's 30 cents. If I could buy propane gas at 30 cents, it'd be great. It'd save a lot of money, but we can't do that. So we went out, we looked at all these with the committee. We walked through the process, putting them out in the newspaper and all those things first. And we'd like to bring to you the highlighted ones, which is in your packet.
So to summarize then, you're recommending that we accept the bids from Holtzman for some of the delivery, Petroleum Traders and then Petroleum Traders for some deliveries as well.
Yeah, we're separating just because it saves us money.
Okay.
It's better for us.
We have a motion
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
Any questions?
Do we know who Berkeley County uses, and have we looked at Berkeley and/or Morgan to do with our cooperative agreements that we're able to do to see if we could get a better price, even if we partner with at least one other, but maybe two other counties?
We are talking about that. Now, we haven't checked with them right now. I know they use Petroleum Traders. I do know that because they have for years. But with food service, we're doing some of those things. So this would be a good step for us in the future. At this point, I don't believe we could change what we're doing this year, but I can certainly look for it for next year. Make sure we get those things done. And because we can even piggyback off their bid at some times. Depending on how it's written up. This was written up for our amounts and our things, so they give us bids for us.
I mean, if that's something that we could take even, is it something that we would have to bid to say yes tonight, or our contract runs out, or is it something that we can wait?
We'd have to have it on the next board agenda for sure, because it had to be before July 1.
Before July 1. So is it something that you feel like maybe we could, to where we could maybe call them and renegotiate that?
If you would like me
at
to,
all?
I can go back and contact Berkeley County, not a problem, and see what they're paying.
Obviously, it's up to the rest of the board, but I kind of would like to see that, like, going forward, even because we do have that opportunity to partnership, I think the more that we look at, the better buying power we have, the more that helps both of us, right?
Yeah.
To negotiate.
Oh, yeah.
those
Like I
kinds of
said, we
deals.
do it with most of our food service things today.
Yeah.
Milk being one, for example.
Yeah, with the price of fuel not going down anytime soon, and, anywhere that we can save on that. But.
Anytime, anywhere.
So one question would be whether between now and July 1, could we even do a revised RFP?
We could not. We'd have to piggyback on theirs.
So it's, could we even piggyback off theirs?
Probably not.
Or is it really just a question of knowing,
Going
finding
forward.
between now and the next board meeting, just for comparison purposes, knowing what they're paying? Is that?
We can-
Pretty much right
we
now,
can
at
go
this
that
point,
fast.
that's about where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the will of the board? So in other words, we would delay consideration of this by one board meeting just for the additional information.
At this point, if all we're going to get is additional information, I'm fine with not delaying it. I just would like to have that information
Totally, yeah.
going forward. And is this a one-year contract?
This is a one-year contract. All of our contracts have to be one-year contract, renewing possibly 3 years, but you have the option after 1 year of all of our contracts to walk out.
Yeah. I think if we don't do it now, though, what's going to happen is just like, I know we've actually talked about this before, so what'll happen is next year we'll get these bids in, the same thing will happen, and it won't get done. So I think everything we do from now on, we have to look at it that way, that there's got to be better buying power somewhere, somehow, and if we can get it, I think we always...
And, this is, it hasn't previously been under the jurisdiction of but our new co-op, I mean, is this something that we could look at?
It's newly created, and it actually exists as of July 1.
We're looking at these sort of
So-
things. I mean, these are some of the things that we should look at.
And lucky you actually have among you and where is
I was
the
thinking
new vice
Lisa.
chair of
Yeah.
Epic for the
All right, put this on your list,
Probably
Mr. Osborne. Or this lady is going to be after you.
No problem.
It won't be too hard.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the recommendations as outlined by Mr. Dingus. And we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
I'll send you all an email sometime this week with that.
Good.
Thank you, Ralph.
Athletic trainers. Mr. Horowitz, good to see you.
It's nice to see you. Recommend that the board approves Pivot Physical Therapy as our continued athletic training service. Mr. Horowitz is here to answer any questions. So we do have a survey attached there that was completed by some of our coaches and AD directors. It's a 5-point scale, and I think overall comes out to about a 4.83 as far as the satisfaction rating going from those respondents that we're looking at the same cost as this current school year also, which is always good to hear when things aren't increasing.
So the recommendation is to approve the, to award to Pivot Physical Therapy
Yes,
for the
sir.
next year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before we get to questions, motion, do we have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
I do have one question. The contract reads that it starts August 1st, and our sports tryouts and everything, the way the week falls, start on July 30th. Is there any way to
We'll have trainers,
amend
yeah.
that to make it effective July 30th?
We certainly can amend the contract. We
Or
very
provide the
typically, we always
services.
provide the services. We always have our trainers there for the student athletes.
It hasn't
Okay.
been an issue in the past.
And so you're currently providing the service right now, because we have athletes that are...
That is correct.
For the current year,
Yeah.
because they've already started some workouts.
Through weeks, I guess this is week 52, 53.
Yeah.
I don't remember the
Yeah,
term, but
something like
we
that.
provide service to them. We'll make sure that we have
Okay.
trainers. I think the only time we had a problem was when we had a trainer lead due to a complicated pregnancy. So.
Go ahead, Ms.
The only thing I was going to say is I think it might be nice too. I always get good feedback on the training staff that you provide, and I don't know if it would be in this genre, but asking the trainers even, I think, to what are they seeing? What kinds of best practices can we do better at, or how are we? They're the ones I feel like that are on the ground, and they're with the athletes all the time. If they see things, do they feel like the reporting is efficient? Do they feel like if they make a recommendation, that they can turn that into to a supervisor, meaning the athletic coordinator, or upwards or whatever, where that gets taken care of? Do they? I guess I'd like some feedback too from them, from their perspective, just how they feel about
So would you like
the
to
job.
us to present them with a survey? Yeah.
Sure, yeah, something of that nature. I mean, whatever.
Discussing their interactions, I can have them come speak to you. I don't-
Yeah, or even maybe even bringing that up at the athletic
The AD's
AD's meeting
Yeah.
to find out how that would best be done. But going forward, if that's something that you don't mind, I'd like to kind of get some feedback from them.
Sure, I know that even Caitlin at Jefferson's working directly with the nursing staff there and doing some things about emergent medicine there in the school system as not with sports, so. But I can certainly ask for that.
Yeah, I think it can only get better and, by doing that, but I just want to make sure that we're doing everything safety-wise we need to, and they're going to maybe know things that we don't know or things that they think should be done that we've never done before. I don't know, but it'd be nice to have a little bit of some feedback there.
Okay, so specifically with the athletic directors? Yeah. Okay.
Is there any plan to address the lower rating at Jefferson and why it was lower there? I mean, is
There were
there
more folks that filled out the survey there. I think we looked at the survey, we see a lot more Jefferson coaches filled out the survey, which probably lends itself to a little bit more variance in the...
But is there a way that we can address and possibly get a more favorable rating from them?
Certainly. So we, in the month of July, have a 3-day staff development with all 80 of our athletic trainers coming into Maryland. At that point, we do discuss survey results.
Yeah,
and what they can do better.
I'm sure the services are all pretty much the same that you're offering all these schools, but evidently there's...
It's some are dictated by contract, so some change by contract, sir.
Okay.
Can you speak to current concussion protocols, just generally, and kind of how it works?
West Virginia's SSACs, or
Well,
in-
for your, to the extent that your physical therapists are involved, and I don't know if you are, I mean, during practice or game days.
So our athletic trainers
Yeah.
are involved. We do not diagnose as athletic trainers, so they refer out their emergent medicine. If a suspected concussion occurs in a playing facility practice at any time, that patient, that student athlete is referred out, and they cannot return to play until they're cleared by a physician who specializes in concussions. They can't shop a doctor. They can't go to they can't go to somebody who doesn't specialize in that and request a return to play when they have no idea what they're talking neurologically. At that point, they have to follow a West Virginia SSAC return to play protocol that was put together, that's run over 7 days, 6 days, depending on how you look at it from day one. And they have to meet all the criteria before they return to play. As a physical therapist, the other side of what we do, we don't see student athletes very much. We only see the student athletes who are very slow to meet those conditions. So say they start in and they get to level 2 and they do some exertion, and then all the signs and symptoms of the concussion go back, then they go to a return to play protocol somewhere else so they can slowly return to play. So I hope that makes sense. As far as it's an ever-changing medium or bubble, and every state has their own rules. Some are more strict than others. West Virginia does a fairly good job. Yeah, absolutely. Maryland's probably the best of the 7 states we have athletic trainers.
Any other questions? So the recommendation is to award the 1-year contract at, what was that figure? $84,000 a year for the services. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, and we have always enjoyed the outstanding relationship. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
And that's it for unfinished business.
Yes, sir.
New business.
It certainly doesn't feel new. When
Pardon me.
yes, sir. When the board made the decision to adopt the 2018-2019 calendar, at the time the board deferred, because it wasn't a requirement, adopting graduation dates for next year. At the time when you adopted the calendar, we had not yet held our graduation for this year. And it was the first time in some time that we had moved it to a Sunday, and the board wanted to go through that experience before they made a decision. If you will recall, we sent out a survey, which we had 536 people respond to. And of those, when we had asked them originally this year, do you want Saturday, do you want Sunday, or do you want a Thursday, Friday, weekday? The vast majority preferred Sunday. Second to that was 44.18%. Second to that was Saturday at 32.54%. And third was weekday graduations at 23.28%. The board then asked me to go back and look at just the junior parents' responses to the survey and say, hey, not everybody, maybe your child's in the 3rd grade and you're giving us information about graduation. I want to know someone that it affects right now and see if it changes their answer. And it did, ever so slightly, but remembering this is just one set of juniors, that was 65 of the 536 were juniors who were immediately affected by graduation. And in those, Saturday graduation came in at 43% preference. Sunday graduation came in at 40% preference, which was only a difference of 2 people.
I'm sorry,
And-
could you say that again?
2 people.
No, back up. The preference for the 2 preferences.
So when you took all 536 people who answered the survey, the preference was for a Sunday graduation, followed by Saturday, followed by weekdays. When you culled out just the juniors, just the 11th graders whose kids were immediately affected now, it changed slightly in that there were only 65 of those, and 43% of them, 28, chose Saturday. 40% of them, only 2 people less, chose Sunday. And then 16.92% chose weekday graduation. The board had those results prior to the calendar discussion. They wanted us to live through the experience of having a Sunday graduation, which necessitates both starting after religious services on a Sunday and being able to have 2 back-to-back high school graduations, and whether or not there were logistical challenges to that we did not anticipate. You guys were all there. We did not have any logistical challenges that we couldn't overcome. And
You no longer have you don't have a graduating senior next year, do you?
No. My bigger question, I guess, is have we looked at the state playoffs and states?
we have the 5-year WVSSAC schedule. Yes, I can guarantee you that something will be on this Saturday for graduation.
Okay, but
Sunday,
Sunday,
May 19th was the only day that was free, if I remember correctly.
On this one, are you asking us to look up are you asking
I'm not
us
asking
to
about the
bring you back
graduation that
to-
already happened.
Mhm.
That's
Sunday,
done with.
May 19th of 2019 was the only day that was not effective, as I recall. In that,
Well, that was the only day not affected this past year. I just want to make sure it's consistent.
I'm almost positive.
5
'cause
years.
This year it was 20. This year was I'm pretty sure it was the same day.
So this item is, so it's under new business, and all it says is graduation date. Is this an informational item with potential action, or is there a recommendation that you're asking us to consider? Or is that up to my colleague to my left?
That is, as always, a decision of the board. I would point out, I have the 5-year WVSSAC schedule in front of me, and if I roll to 2019, and again, presuming that the board does not choose Memorial Day weekend. If you choose the weekend before Memorial Day, the 18th is on a Saturday and the 19th is a Sunday. Sectionals for baseball are May 10th through the 22nd. May 11th through the 23rd in 2019-2020, so it covers that time span. And softball, 18th through the 23rd. And tennis is the 14th through the 16th. And track states says regionals are May 13th through the 16th, and state are May 22nd, May 23rd.
And the calendar that we approved a couple of meetings ago, did we left this blank?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I know that for the first time in 12 years, I'm going to take a vacation day on graduation day. So, just for the rest of you.
So, let me just make sure I understand. Track this year is going to be on the 22nd and 23rd.
That's states. Regionals are the 13th and the 16th. But yes, ma'am,
Right.
the states, it says May 22nd and 23rd for the, I'm looking, 2019. Hold on. Track, yes, May 22nd and May 23rd, it says for states for the 2019-2020 WVSSAC standardized calendar.
So that's different from their historical dates, which were like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now it's Wednesday, Thursday, the following week.
But hold on a minute, 'cause don't we want 18-19, not 19-20?
Right, you're looking at Sunday the 19th.
I see what you're saying. Okay, hold on. Then it's May, you're right, because I was looking at 19. So it's May 17th and 18th for state for track, which is
That's
Saturday, but
Friday
not
and
the
Saturday.
Sunday.
And as far as baseball and softball go, those regionals, the 11th or 18th through the 23rd.
Okay, hold on. So baseball, regionals are the 20th through the 25th. State is May 30th and June 1st for baseball. Yeah, I was looking at 19.
I just want to know when golf is.
Softball is the 13th through the 18th,
18th.
and the 22nd and 23rd.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the 19th is an open day then.
Say that again?
Okay.
It is
The
it's
ninth.
Sunday the 19th.
Sunday the 19th.
Right,
is
but
an
the 18th
untouched
is
day.
not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the 19th misses everything. Baseball, track.
Sounds like a winner.
Okay.
We may make some adjustments because what we've traditionally done is had schools flip each time from Washington to Jefferson, and Jefferson's is a longer ceremony, but this
longer.
year we timed both of them. And Jefferson was
40 minutes longer.
40 minutes longer.
So you'd be inclined not to switch them?
Well,
Given
we
that.
would switch them. We would just take that adjustment into consideration on
Oh,
graduation times, either bumping them up or
Yeah.
out of fairness to them.
Unless you put a time limit on it.
We
Well-
didn't this year. There was some, I will say, there was some fear that we would. You know, people always fear the unknown, and sometimes they make the worst assumptions. There was some fear that we would censor them somehow. And we said, no, this is your time. You do what you need to do, but these are our constraints. And it worked beautifully. We actually had a good bit of time in between.
I will say, look, it was easy for us. All we had to do was show up, but I didn't get any negative feedback. I don't know if others did.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I did.
Did you get negative feedback? I didn't.
I didn't get dessert, but that's okay.
Well, that's another issue.
I will say the schools cooperated beautifully in terms of the first school setting up and using what they could for the second school. I mean, you got to swap out colors and things, but you
The
know,
green
they
plants and things like
coordinated
that.
it very, very well. It came together well. I have no qualms whatsoever about running it again on a Sunday and doing it back to back.
So then are you making a recommendation for Sunday, May 19th?
Actually, yes, sir. I think out
2019.
of fairness to our students, it is the one day where we will not force any child to make a decision between their representing their school for athletics and attending their graduation.
Okay, do we have a motion and a second?
Second.
All of those in favor of establishing May 19th as graduation date for 2019? Vote aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Item B.
The board is required following an election to have a mandatory organizational meeting in which they elect officers and establish their calendar for the following year. That is by statute required to be the first Monday in July, which this year will be July 2nd during the 4th of July holiday week, where I will not be at the beach because I will be here, and along with you, my friends. So, however, our regularly scheduled board meeting, keeping the same schedule, would then fall the following Monday on July the 9th. And given that it's during the summer, we don't have recognitions, it's a very light board meeting, our recommendation is the consolidation of those. And since you have to have the organizational meeting on July 2nd, go ahead and pull your July 9th meeting back and just simply have it on July 2nd because you have to be here and have a meeting anyway.
That's what we've done in the past.
Yeah, and we have done it in the past out of consideration for people's time during the summer. They get little enough time with their families without us, running a board meeting every 2 weeks, and you have to have the agenda, Janet has to have the agenda up 3 business days early, and we have to put everything in, and we're one of the few places that doesn't just put a moratorium on meetings in the month of July, but it is what it is.
I will recuse myself from any discussion or voting on this, since I will not be impacted, but happy to lead the discussion. So is there a recommendation as of yet, or do you want to discuss it?
The recommendation, I think, is to combine them.
And have it on the 2nd.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Is there a timing-wise issue on it, or do we have any thought process on that we have to have it later on? Because usually when we do that, in the past, before we did consolidate it, I know when we had the one board meeting, we did it earlier in the day, or we did it at noon, or something of that nature. I don't remember until we did consolidate it, but does it
You don't have a
matter?
constraint in terms of time. You can set it up for a different time. You don't have to have it in the evening.
That would be my only thing if we wanted to consider doing that, if people were going to leave for the holiday. If we have it earlier in the day. Any of our staff are going to be done and be able to come earlier in the day anyway, hopefully. That's my
I
only
don't
thought.
have an issue with that. Do you have an issue with making it earlier in the day?
I assume you want to try to set a time now.
Doesn't make a difference to me.
The
We just
only
set
thing
the
that-
date and then we.
The only thing that I would ask is that it be afternoon, because that morning at 10 a.m. is the graduation for our English language learner summer program. So our students who go through our ELL program, we have a special graduation for them that morning.
At Tristwood?
Yes, ma'am, yeah. Yes,
Probably just 2 o'clock.
That was nice.
2 sounds fine for me.
So the motion is to consolidate on what date?
July 2nd.
July 2nd at 2 p.m. Okay. And Janet, I will not vote on this. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Virtual school policy.
Yes, sir. In continuing a trend, a positive trend, I think, from our legislature, Senate Bill 230 was enacted this past school year to give school systems some flexibility in allowing either individual school systems or cooperatives such as EPIC to establish virtual education programs. That was previously not an option for school systems. And we have spent a good bit of time both meeting with the other superintendents and instructional directors in EPIC, reviewing virtual programs and meeting with our own staff regarding some of the logistics around the possibilities of this. So in essence, what the law allows us to do is that the school board may, they're not required to, but may establish a policy that allows students in grades 6 through 12 to enroll in a school-sponsored virtual school program. And in essence, it allows those students to be enrolled in Jefferson County schools and take all of their coursework virtually. They are not required to physically attend school. Now, having looked at a lot of the research and having actually run virtual school programs in other places, it is rarely successful to have children whose brains are still developing to send them out into the wilds on their own with a laptop and trust that they are simply going to be motivated and engaged and be able to teach themselves the wonders of technology. So the option is either to do a completely virtual program or to do a blended program, which is virtual with some accountability built in. Hey, we have tutors on site. You have to come in once a week and we check in with you. Did you get all of these assignments? I've been tracking you online and I noticed that you've fallen behind a little bit in your math. This section seems to be giving you trouble. Let's talk through what that problem is. We are advocating for a blended program. The policy states that this is only available for the first year for grades 6 through 12. When a school system has established and run a virtual school program for one full year successfully, they may legally establish a virtual school program for elementary. We do not, at this point, anticipate. It'd be good to have the option. The idea is that we would like to begin this very slowly, quite frankly. We would rather start off with a very small number of students and figure out what's successful in supporting them, what the best screening tools are for figuring out which kids can best benefit from virtual. We've met with our IT director, we've met with our instructional coordinators, we've met with the principals, we met with all of the union reps just so that we had these conversations so folks sort of understand where we're going with this. I will say that one of our primary goals in this is to recapture some of the more than 900 students in this school system who are currently being homeschooled. Now, for those students, every one of those students represents state tax dollars that their parents pay anyway, but then don't flow back to Jefferson County schools. They go to the state and they stay there because those individual children aren't enrolled in our school system. And it's a loss of income and a loss of resources for us. The idea would be that at our invitation. We would invite homeschool parents in for an informational program. We would screen their children to ensure that they have a sufficient skill set to be able to benefit from the virtual schools program. We would, for successful students, we would provide them with a laptop. We would provide them with the online virtual program, and in exchange, they would enroll their child. They would be a Jefferson County school student. We would receive the full FTE child count, which is basically the money that the state gives to a school system for having a child enrolled in their schools. And that student would then, for all intents and purposes, be a Jefferson County school student, meaning they would have full access to the band and the football team and every other amenity that we offer as a system, which homeschool students currently do not have.
And that meets the WVSSAC requirements?
It does. There has been, now I will say this, there has been only one school system. It was a pilot this school year, and it was in Kanawha. They ran a very interesting modified virtual school program, and bless them for being the guinea pigs and the pilots. They had some interesting times with work stoppage and some other things, but yes, we've worked through it, and I won't sugarcoat the fact that there are still the policy that you see. We took some feedback from the State Department. WVDE has reviewed this policy and given us the thumbs up on it. There are still some interesting things to work out. There are a lot of things in the state's attendance policy that don't quite line up with this right now, where we have to figure out where that goes. Us, Mineral, Morgan, Hardy, Hampshire, Pendleton are all running some level of pilot virtual program this year. In an effort to, quite frankly, bring some flexibility into our system, because I will say the other thing that this opens up that we've run into, because folks are kind of excited about this now, is right now West Virginia is very prescriptive about what it means to be a full-time high school student. You basically have to have 4 courses, and your butt needs to be in a seat in Jefferson County schools for those 4 courses. This virtual school policy, in order to run virtual school, you as a school board are passing a policy that says you don't physically have to be here, and I can still give you credit for attending, provided you meet these other parameters. So, of course, what that opens up and what we're seeing is people want flexibility. The same way people want to have 87 kinds of breakfast cereal, they want to be able to pick and choose sort of this very a la carte educational experience. They want flexibility. Public schools, I think, are being pushed, maybe less so here, but certainly in other places, to be a lot more flexible with families and with their modern needs and their desire for travel and their desire to design schedules that they believe are more flexible for their children. So what's come about is that we've had several folks who have high schoolers who are like, my child needs my child is a senior next year, and they only need 2 classes. They need civics and they need English 12, and that is it, and they can graduate. I don't want to make him or her go sit at our high school 4 periods a day. They don't want to. They know they only need 2 classes. They're that smart. They understand. What they want is, okay, I get it. You have to have at least 4 classes in order to be considered a full-time student. Can I do 1 online class and then do 3 classes at Blue Ridge or at Shepherd, or 2 online classes and 2 Shepherd classes? I've taken your 4 classes, because the state code says 4 classes, either high school credit bearing or college credit bearing classes. So it gives you the flexibility to do either. The reality is while it's really nice to sit here and talk about all this flexibility, the flip side of that is somebody has to manage that. Somebody has to manage enrolling those kids. Somebody has to manage tracking those kids. Somebody has to manage tutoring and bringing those kids in. Somebody has to manage their attendance when they're not actually here and checking in on them virtually. So some of this is putting in the infrastructure around the flexibility. So what we are asking is that the board simply put this policy out for public review. We are meeting with the school counselors on Wednesday, partially to have a discussion around what kind of supports do we have to have in place in order for this to be able to work, because the minute we opened the door for this much flexibility with the idea that we would invite a handful, we literally talked about let's not have more than a dozen, maybe 10, because we want to do it really, really well. Homeschool students that we invite in and we screen them and we work with their families, and what kind of support system do you need? Do you need to come in once a week? You need to come in twice a week? Do we need to have just one tutor? Do we need to have different subject area tutors? Just figuring out what works best for kids. And when we opened the door this wide with this discussion, people went, and they want to run through it with, oh, wow, we could do all of this, which sounds great until you're the person who has to manage it, because if you don't do it well and some kid doesn't meet their graduation requirements and doesn't walk because we screwed up, that's a non-starter. So you have the policy in front of you. It covers all the WVSSAC and all the state requirements. It goes over what happens if a kid has to drop out of the course and drop back into regular courses, assessment, grading, diplomas, removal from the course if kids don't do well. We've tried to anticipate all of the issues that we could run into. We've worked with the adult education program with the idea that the tutoring sessions would take place at the brand new Adult Ed Center down on Fairfax Avenue. That's a very nice, centrally located. It has multiple large and small group computer labs that we can utilize. But it's a start, and it's a good start, but there's a lot of work to be done to make this successful.
Page 1, just real quick. If you look down under, it says virtual course, and then the next line underneath that is virtual instruction program. Does that need to be, am I reading that wrong, at the end of that, enrolled in any composition of grades 6 through 12?
Yeah, it
Okay.
does. Well,
Yeah.
well, here's where that came from. Is
Yes.
we started off, it was only going to be 6 through 8, because what we said is we'll just do it. What we did is we went and counted the number of homeschool middle schoolers that we had, and we talked to several proprietary virtual programs, and they gave us the numbers for parents who live in Jefferson who were already paying them for their program. I have 76 parents in Jefferson who are already paying a lot of money, thousands of dollars, for these virtual programs to be able to homeschool their students. And those are probably our easiest market to say, hey, I'll give you a laptop and you can run it through us, and then we get the money from the state, you get a free education, and we get the funds here in the school system. It's a win-win.
So before we open this up to questions, I'm sure there'll be many, what you're asking right now is you're recommending that we approve to put out for review
Yes, sir.
a virtual education program policy that Jefferson County, based upon review and further consideration, would adopt. We would not be adopting it tonight. We would be but this is a recommendation to put it out for review both internally and with the broader community.
Absolutely,
And
sir.
for the, and generally it's out for review for 2 weeks.
At
And
least.
we would
Yes, sir.
revisit after those 2 weeks whether you've had sufficient input.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So do we have a motion? And a
Second.
second. Thank you. All right. This is very interesting and exciting. Questions?
Do I understand that in this program, a student could say, well, I want to take 2 courses in the virtual realm, but the rest of the courses that I need for that particular year, I'll be in a class. Is that possible?
That's a good. The program is structured right now where it gives us that option if we wish. The idea, and again, that's how this is evolving. We wrote this policy so that we could run the program just for bringing back in homeschool folks, starting with middle schoolers and growing the program every year as those kids move up 1 grade. What it has morphed into is high schoolers who want to use it to finish their high school program without having to sit at the high school 4 periods a day. So could we utilize it in that way? Yes, sir, we absolutely could. Are we currently staffed and have policies and procedures and protocols for that? Absolutely not. We're working on those. We've met with technology several times. We're building it, which is why we're trying to keep it small. And there's just people's appetite for wanting what they want is this constant push of, I want more. I want more choices. I want more flexibility. And that's wonderful in its progress, but every single one of those takes resources. It takes another human body to track it. It takes more money to buy the laptops and the virtual classes and all of the resources that go into it, the tutors, all of those things cost money. And if the idea was never to sort of cannibalize ourselves by pulling kids out of who are sitting in our brick and mortar schools and pulling them out into virtual. The idea was always to get homeschool folks who were sitting out there where their tax dollars were going to Charleston instead of coming back and pull them back in. With recognizing that slowly it would morph into something that was an alternative. I don't ever think that we're going to have 20% of our kids who don't want to come sit in a school every day. They do. Their parents do. They need us for childcare. I mean, that's just flat out a reality. We're never going to have half of our kids, out running, skateboarding around with laptops. But probably there's a larger percentage than we know. And quite frankly, a good percentage of our highest performing, most economically advantaged kids whose parents have the flexibility that they don't need us for childcare, that are choosing a different option, and that is taking revenue and resources and scores and performance away from us. And quite frankly, I'll be completely honest, one of my other thoughts is that eventually those folks who are banging on charter schools and saying, you need to give West Virginians choice, you need charter schools, get ahead of the game and create options for people now. I mean, that's not necessarily West Virginia's jam. Let's think ahead and give people, build it right now for later when they want these options. But if the reality is if they finally succeed in breaking open charter schools here, I would love for Jefferson to have had 2 or 3 years of successfully running a virtual school program, have all the kinks worked out, have had kids graduate from it. Their parents feel good about it. They love it that they have options. They love it that we're meeting their needs. We have a good relationship. We go to run a levy or we've got overcrowded high schools, which we do, and I can pull 20 kids out of there. Those teachers still have jobs. They're just teaching virtual classes instead of sitting in there. So, hey, you're a young mom. You want some flexibility. You don't have to get up and come in for a 7:30 a.m. class. Your tutor of the day starts at 11, and then you're answering some kids doing asynchronous classes. I mean, if we do it carefully and we do it well and we do it with a lot of conversation and iteration, then we're in the lead. We're way out in front of it. It's just, we can't wait until it's perfect or until somebody else makes it perfect and then we adopt it. We've got to work through it.
Do we have a way to cap it and control it?
That is a great question, and yes, sir, we do. It's our choice, which is sort of why I'm trying to have this
We
conversation.
cap it at 24 kids the first year, whatever the magic number is. Are we okay when someone else, the 25th kid, wants to get in and we don't let them in?
I will say, based on, again,
You understand what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. We can't, let me say this, we can't turn down anyone, and we never would, who wants to enroll in Jefferson County schools. We can and do all the time turn down kids who want to enroll in programs that are full. If we don't have enough seats in this classroom, I love it that you want to take AP Government. You don't get to take that this year because I don't have a seat for you. I love it that you want to be in ROTC. I don't have enough slots for you, or I don't have, we do that all the time with programs. So if what happened is someone who was homeschooling their kid came back to us and we said, look, we really can only handle 20 kids, but if you want to enroll your kid in our physical school, knock yourself out. But our virtual program is full. We have the right to do that because we're not denying them a public education. They can still come and enroll in the school. Will somebody be at that podium giving us grief? Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Okay.
No, we're still totally accountable for their education. So are there stopgaps in there where, like the online classes that we have now, you have to come in and take your quizzes or exams and they're proctored by our staff? Would it be set up the same way?
And again, this offers us that flexibility. We chose in this policy to say that our policy was to have a blended program where there was an accountability measure. And the law allows us to set it up in a host of different ways. Some of the best ones that I've seen are heavy early on. If you're brand new to this game, then twice a week for the first 9 weeks, you have to come in here and we have to lay eyes on you. Your parents have to bring you in and we've got to walk through, make sure you're logging in. And then you get kids that they've got it. They're doing it now. And then we can stretch those times out. Okay, I only have to see you once a month, once a quarter. I need to see 3 times a day, and bring them back in. It doesn't, the policy doesn't dictate that to us. The policy simply states you, the board, are giving us the authority to create that program. And there are some pieces of it in here, but it doesn't dictate down to the nuance of how often you have to come in, and it doesn't restrict you that way.
I just don't want people going this route for the wrong reasons. That would be my only concern.
As would ours, which is part of why we talked about starting small and having screening, because we have some folks that it's an easy out to get out of attendance. They don't want an attendance judge.
Attendance or grade requirements for sports. Right. And that, I'm still confused about the verbiage of that in here, because it says that students must meet the same extracurricular activity eligibility requirements as students enrolled in the traditional day program, including any applicable WVSSAC requirements.
Meaning you have to have at least 4 courses, and you have to maintain the grade point average. Requirements are the same, even though they're virtual classes. And the attendance requirements are the same. So some of this is, and this is part of what we're working through with Dr. Hoff, when we say attendance requirements, if we say, hey, you have to log in at least 3 times per week and do a module, and we check on you, which we can at any time, and you've only logged in once this week, I can hit you for 2 absences. Now, some of this is us working through, and we're working on a document for the parents to have to sign, they'd have to sign an acceptable use policy, and an agreement about the equipment and things. But some of them are about, hey, if you don't maintain, if we get 4.5 weeks in and you're failing, we have every right to pull you and say, virtual's not for you. You're not getting this done. We've counseled you, we've worked with you, and when you're not sitting here under our thumb, you're not doing your work. So at this point, your choice is going to be able to have to drop back into bricks and mortar where we can put our hands on you every day, or you're just going to have to withdraw because you can't do this program because it needs to be successful. So right now we have some of those things written in. Like if you look at we have some counseling and guidance services. We say under removal that a student may be transitioned back to a traditional school program or removed from the virtual program if they don't maintain at least a 60% in each course. Progression through the coursework falls below the minimum comparable traditional course standard, which means, hey, it's been 3 weeks and you haven't put in a grade. Well, that's not going to cut it. Attendance requirements, the usual. You can't plagiarize, you can't break our rules, things like that. You can't look at inappropriate things on the internet.
So, I understand this is really a discussion draft, but, I think it's innovative, and we should be looking at different delivery models, particularly for perhaps older students. A couple questions. I was confused by, and maybe you answered, this might have been Gary's question, but you started out talking about, excuse me, this blended program. A student couldn't enroll entirely in virtual. That they, or did you? Because like for a homeschool student, they arguably could, right?
Well, and again, that's a great point. I probably need to be clear in my speech. When we say an entirely virtual program, yes, meaning all virtual classes. Do you have to come and sit here for a single class or go sit at a university for a class? The way this is written, no, you do not. They can be all virtual classes. However, the state uses some interesting verbiage between virtual and what they call blended. Blended is all virtual classes, but you have to come and see us at some point. There is a face-to-face requirement. It doesn't mean that you go sit at the high school for a class, but you do have to come in and check in face-to-face with a tutor who says they saw you, they looked at your work, you worked through them. So we've put into ours that it's going to be a blended program, but can it be all virtual classes? Yes. The way this is written right now, yes, it can be all virtual classes.
And would it be possible for a particularly motivated student to accelerate graduation under this program?
Yes, sir.
Graduate in 3 years instead of, or 4 years instead of.
And with the new minimum less credit graduation requirements, absolutely. I think this is where this is going to explode in a couple of years, because the kids who come in under those new graduation requirements are going to start hitting. They'll be in their junior year and they'll owe us one class. Nobody wants to come back for their entire senior year and sit through 4 classes for one class when they know that's all they want. So us being able to say, hey, go to Blue Ridge Community College, take that one class online, virtually.
Provides an interesting opportunity for students who are in a circumstance where they could do so to do a gap year before college, which actually would make them far more competitive for college admissions.
Or if we continue to create the partnerships like we've been talking about with the new company coming in and providing senior year internships, we may be able to work with more business partnerships to be able to allow them to do that and make them more marketable when they want a job.
And who does someone in our school system or at the state level choose the menu of virtual classes that you can take, or I find an online calculus course that meets some general standards of rigor, I can take that, or is it a defined menu?
We would define the menu. Right now, we've interviewed and we put out an RFP. We had 3 vendors respond. All of the regional superintendents met and reviewed those. We did not come to a consensus because the discussion had been, would we order through Epic and try to get some buying power and drive the courses down? And the reality is that none of us we're putting through large enough numbers in the first year to get any kind of discount pricing. There are school systems who are trying this. Hardy they might have 3 kids in it. Mineral's going whole hog. They're going to have 9, None of us are going to put 50 kids in here the first year. We know it would be a hot mess. Like, we can't manage it. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the infrastructure set up to do that. So, but when you say that when we, like Odyssey is the company that had the best pricing, best bid. They have hundreds of courses for students to be able to take. But can somebody just go out on the internet and find a class and then come to us and say, I want to? Absolutely not. No, you have to go through our virtual program.
I remember at one of the School Board Association meetings, I remember it being Jefferson because it was the same. I think it was Jefferson, Ohio had come, and they had their staff. Do you remember that, Kathy? I picked up a folder from there. I'm sure I still have it. But it's their staff created all of high school, 9th through 12th grade. They've done every single class online, and their teachers created all the curriculum and wrote all the tests, and all of it was online. I swear it was Jefferson. Well, I know, right?
You're right.
I mean,
I was
maybe,
but and it was
Wow.
already done virtually because that was something that they offered. I'll find that folder.
wow.
Well,
Wasn't it?
Wow.
to Mrs. Ogden's point, I would recommend, I don't know if any surrounding jurisdictions in Maryland or Virginia have tried this, but it'd be nice to invite them to come give us a presentation on their experience.
Okay. Certainly.
The only other question I have real quick, Jefferson County's dual credit policy applies to virtual program. What's that mean?
Meaning, if it is a virtual college course, that the college credit would apply as well.
Would apply, yeah.
So
Okay.
our
That's
dual
good.
credit policy that says you get high school and college credit, if you do a virtual class that meets the same criteria, you'll get high school credit and college credit, even though it's a virtual course.
Okay.
Hurry
So
up,
if you
I could
took-
get one of my kids out of the house a lot sooner.
Doing my best for you. Doing my best for you.
And I mean, this isn't totally foreign for us because of the fact that we're currently doing virtual classes. It's just not virtual school.
Right. We are doing some virtual classes already. We are, no doubt. We are using West Virginia's virtual school program, which is not a proprietary program, and
In Florida.
yeah, they contract with somebody out of Florida, where we have a little less control. And one of the great things about this program is that we made it a requirement that we could utilize our own teachers. So we have the certified teachers to be able to teach the class. They just go through the virtual training. That way we're employing our own folks. They already know the kids.
Does this also lend itself to, long-term? You have a child in 8th grade who is one of those higher flyers. They could take a 9th grade class in 8th grade virtual.
And this is what happens.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
oh, but wait, could you do that? We
I'll
can
say
do anything
next
we
year.
want to do.
Couple of years.
But
I'm just thinking,
in theory, does this give us that flexibility? Yes, it does. Honestly, some of this is trying to manage people's expectations.
Yeah.
They get really excited about all this cool stuff that we could do if we had 20 more staff.
Right.
So partly I don't want to set all these huge, it is a really good foundation for us to do some great things for kids and families. But if we don't manage expectations and put the resources into keeping it small in the beginning and doing it well, it will fall apart underneath us because we're trying to serve too many masters. And that's my fear. Because we don't have anybody right now. I'm doing this. We don't have a person to do this. So we're working that out. But
Well, this is part of the virtual world. I mean, so what are you complaining about?
I'm looking forward to the virtual superintendency where I'm at Martha's Vineyard with a margarita and beaming in to this meeting. This is me. If that's where we're going, then let's go hard. Let's go now.
But I
We're in.
presume that this would be managed in curriculum and instruction. I mean, is that
Yes, sir, because technology is in curriculum and instruction as well. Yes, sir, it would be.
But when we limit this to, let's say, 20 children the first year,
Notice how I said 10 and she said 20.
I thought we were talking 50 a minute ago. I cut it back for you. All right.
I'm hearing
X number-
25. Do I hear 20?
X number of children. Okay. Now, we probably already have X number of children taking virtual classes. Like if
good
we
question.
have an online AP class just in itself, or we have, a child taking online physics perhaps, or whatever it is. Now, we probably already have X plus however many. So when you say we're only letting X number of kids do it, we've already got that. So it's not going to.
I think in this case, that's a great point. Just because you are taking a virtual class doesn't mean that you're in this program. Like right now, you may be taking a virtual AP class, but your kid is sitting at Washington High School 4 periods a day.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? This is, you don't have to come here. You don't have to set foot here.
But it's not going to restrict those programs that the kids already have. I just
No,
want to
ma'am.
make sure that that's not going to take up.
Although I suspect, again, they're going to see that little opening, and they're all going to want to go through it. Yeah. I'm already getting emails and phone calls. I got an email from a parent tonight.
She's looking at me about.
Miss Ogden, the Friends of Ogden, who are like, "Hey, I hear you guys doing this great virtual school policy, and I've already enrolled my kid at Shepherd, so you guys better pass that, right?" You think the board's gonna see us? Like, okay, we are working on it. We're working on it.
So can we change this before it goes out to say in grades 6
Yes,
through 12
yes, ma'am.
instead of 6 through 8?
Because
and 9 through
our
12 in
original
subsequent years?
intent was
I
6
know.
through 8.
But when we send it out,
I know. Yes,
on
ma'am.
review, if we could just,
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
okay.
Well, this has been great discussion, and look forward to much more on this. So the motion before us is to approve putting out for review a virtual school policy for Jefferson County Schools. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
One more question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
If this is going to be 6 through 12, and we're going to do 10, are you aimed for all of those kids to be at the same grade level, or just you might have 6 kids and
Another good question.
taking 6 different courses at 6 different levels?
Well, you make an excellent point, as usual, Mr. Capel. Our goal was to limit it to middle school for that very reason, so that when we have the face-to-face tutor, it's a certified middle school teacher who can cover all the subjects. When we open it up for high school and we have a 10th grader and they're taking virtual algebra and virtual AP history, it's very rare that I would have a tutor who could cover all of those subjects. So the goal was to narrow it to just middle school. I suspect, part of this is we've got folks who are trying to piggyback something else onto this, which is, let me take one virtual class and the rest of my classes at another location so I don't have to come on campus.
Well, one logistical question is, if you have somebody that, let's say, is going to be a junior this year, and they've been homeschooled their freshman and sophomore year, from what I understand is if you're homeschooled in high school, when you enroll in our high school, you have to go back and start as a freshman because those homeschool years did not count.
Didn't count for your credits.
So if somebody is going to be a junior this year, would they have to start over with the freshman curriculum?
Okay.
Because if that's the case, then that would limit the number of high school kids that would enroll in this program because they're already 3/4 of the way done.
We've had that same discussion, which is why right now we're the only school other than Mineral for their alternative ed kids. No one else is doing this for high school exactly because of those logistical challenges. And then if we do a virtual program, let's say one of those 76 families who's already paying for that same virtual program and they're juniors, are we going to go back and say because we're paying for it, those credits don't count? We're not going to do. Do you see what I'm saying? So there are some serious logistical challenges to opening this up to high schoolers, which is why we did not want to the first year.
Well,
While we work it out.
might be wise not to start with high schoolers, to even though we're going 6 to 12, you might still want to start just in middle school.
That's a great idea, Mr. Cable. That check is in the mail. So, and again, I would say that probably the high school pressure is going to come to board members from parents of seniors who only need 2 classes or only need 3 classes. They
current
don't want.
students.
Yeah, which to me is a current student and a totally different situation.
Which may be
than
a different
4-period
situation,
class.
and the policy, we're sort of piggybacking on, right now, they can't. They have got to come sit here for 4 periods a day, and that's what's eating at people, and quite frankly, some of them are pulling their kids out and either homeschooling them or sending them through task just because they can't get their kids. And trust me, no one wants an 18-year-old boy at school for an extra 3 hours a day that he doesn't want to be. Nobody. Mostly the 16-year-old girl mamas. Nobody wants that. So if there's a way for us to give them an option of finishing their high school career with us and not having to sit there and be disruptive or be frustrated or feel like they're wasting their time, and we can, and I don't know if we separate it from this, it's just this policy. You have to have a policy that says you will let virtual and off-campus take the place of sitting here. So maybe we treat them as separate programs. This is just middle school where we bring them in, give them a laptop, go through this, and then but the policy then allows us to come up with some alternatives for the seniors.
Well, since the state is pushing this, would they be of a mind to allow those students to do that without losing or without having to go back and do all this other stuff,
They would if it's 4 periods a day. They have not budged on, you have to be enrolled in 4 credit bearing, whether it's high school credit or college credit, in order for it to count as a full-time student and for us to get our money. It's got to be 4 classes, even if you only need 2 to graduate. So for those students, we would advise their parents, go take a couple of college classes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that really doesn't make sense, but
No, sir, it does.
that's what in West Virginia does, especially in the school
Now he
system.
gets another check.
Yeah, that's what I say now. Like, I'm running out. I'm going to have to pull out a credit card here soon.
Well, we're not going to solve this tonight, but we've obviously started a very exciting and interesting discussion that I look forward to hearing more about. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Ms. Fitzwater.
A warm down for
Thank
you, Ms. Fitzwater.
Thank you,
Go, girl.
as always, for your patience.
You should put your hand up and say, "Can I be first?"
Yeah, you really should.
I should have, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Oh, goodness. Okay, I will be doing DNE.
D&E, okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
I will be.
So this is a personal care aid.
Correct. This is a recommendation of the continuation of a personal care aid. Oh, wrong one. Yes, from Blue Ridge Primary to Driswood Elementary. The student will be going from pre-K to kindergarten. And at that point, this student was diagnosed in May with the spectrum as autism. So the exceptionality changed. We talked, I believe it was back in October, and I highlighted some back data for you. And we made some progress, but not as much as we had hoped, but we did make progress, so we're super excited about that. And that's, when you're a teacher, your progress is, you celebrate many steps in your progress. And I'll give you a chance to read over that.
So the recommendation is that as this student transitions to the next grade level, they're still in need of a one-to-one aide.
Correct, that this one-on-one just follows them over.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Questions?
Can you get for us, Cindy, I'm just thinking about last year, any positions that we added, I think probably 99% of them were obviously in special ed, and many of them were aides and necessary. But can you get for us, there were some that we said were only to the end of the year, some were till this year. Can you look at the staffing, or maybe even know this? You know which classes are on the edge, right? We get one more student identified. We get, one more student that doesn't make the progress that we need to. And we know we're looking at a possibility of 10 more positions. I mean, I don't know what the number is. I'm sure it's kind of explosive and scary, but that's okay. We need to know it, because what I want to know is how close are we to being prepared to know that we're going to get this question 6 more times this year or 10 more times this year to say, we've had an increase in this population here, we need another person here, we need another person here for a certain amount of time, and then, just so we know what's not in the budget for right now.
Correct, and I think what I also need to get you is the one that discontinued in October, that really just goes on the consent agenda, and not is always noticed by you, but there was probably 2 or 3 that just got discontinued. So I can do a little bit of a data for you that shows both, where I know I'm working with Mr. Cooley right now that we do have spots open that we're actually putting people in, or the PMI where we reduced out of school and that classroom's not there, and so that teacher is gone now.
Right.
Yet we increased over here, and it's sometimes a wash, but I know sitting here, you hear, I need, and not realizing I'm
And
not giving
trust
you
me,
enough information.
Having had a child in that spectrum, I don't begrudge, and I know what the needs are. And the more that we can support them in those early intervention years, the better off we're going to be long term. But just kind of want to know where does our money need to be, and what are we actually looking at long term for staffing, because I think the needs are going to continue to increase with the children that we're going to have coming in. So
They are, and we saw that last year when we looked at the data, is that we have the same number, but the exceptionalities are shifting.
Yep. Okay.
I will get that to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the recommendation is for approval of this would be the continuation of that
Yes.
one-to-one aide.
This is a continuation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have another one?
I did, and actually I'm doing this. My colleague, Dr. Hetzel, was unable to attend tonight, and since I do work with special ed pre-K and pre-K work together, that I'm coming before you to ask for approval of the 18-19 pre-K calendar, which hopefully is uploaded.
It is.
Thank you. Okay, that part I didn't know. In regards to our policy 2525, we have to come before you for approval every year. The goal this year was to provide pre-K professional development days that were consistent with the county professional development days and no school days, so that many of the professional development days mirror the JCS calendar.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Yeah,
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Ms.
Thank
Fitzwater. McCormick grants.
Hello.
Good evening. Always good to see you, and thank you for your patience this evening.
You should have in front of you the grant presentation recommendations and a chart that outlines them as to why, what we did and why. It was unique this year. Before, we have had more money than we had applicants. This year, we had more applicants than we had money. So from the foundation, we got $147,169.29. $1,800 went to administration fees. That brought us to $145,369.29. 10% since the beginning of this has gone to the media center. So we subtract the $14,537 from that. We rounded up. And we also had $16,317.58 not granted last year. So we had a total of $147,149.87 to grant, and we had requests in excess of $184,000. So that was a $37,000 difference. And we are recommending granting all of that money except for $17.11. But not all of the grants we could recommend in full, obviously. Our committee members were Principal Sherry Fitzgerald, Faculty Senate President Marcia Stengel, faculty members Phil Sudam and Amy Vickers, and myself, Finance Debbie McCauley, Board of Ed Mr. Cable, and CNI Pat Blanc. We met on May 22nd. Before that, since we had excess money, I sent an email to several of them who asked for a substantial amount and said, could you prioritize your lists so we can fund some, if not all? And all but one did respond to that and was very grateful about it. One person said, would you ever consider saying, here's X amount of money, and you can spend it on whatever you have denoted in the grant? And we thought, wow, that's pretty interesting, because then they would know exactly what they could get, and sometimes maybe they could get more for their money if they, struck a deal with the person. I don't know. So in many cases, that's what we did. We did. There were a couple that we said it had to be spent for a certain amount. So one of the things in the agenda that I sent you, before we did vent them, we also thought about, there was one that asked for funds for a national convention, and we kind of discussed that, and we decided not to do those for two reasons. Number one, we'd be approving money for things that weren't board approved. And we didn't want to set that precedent because we weren't sure how all that money was going to be spent in these conventions, and we didn't want to mess up anything with the parameters of the foundation and the trust. So one of the grants fell into that category. So of the 21, we did fund 19 of them, either partially or in full. And there's the listing there. There's a chart that came with your thing. So just very quickly, and I'll explain some of them, what happened. Phil Sudam, 30 laptops with a cart for CTE. We recommended in full for $9,978. Mr. Lynch had three grants. One was for $23,230 for instruments, and we recommended a partial of $12,000 to purchase from the list he gave of in his grant. He also wanted $3,500 for drill design for marching band. We recommended that in full. Devin Pearl and the people on the Renaissance Committee for the Freshman Academy, T-shirts and pens to get the freshmen to feel a part of Jefferson right at the start, $2,810. We recommend that. And she also asked for $10,000, and this was the national conference. And so we took the national conference out, and we recommended partial for $4,600 to be used for the senior incentive field trip, reward day, and Renaissance support items, but not for it to be used for national convention. Myself and Mariah Dorfner, $1,600 for a 6-in-1 professional multifunction digital transfer sublimation swing away transfer a press machine for and we recommended that in full for 16.
What the heck is that?
It makes T-shirts. It makes.
The only thing I recognized was the distillery.
I saw two teachers ask for those. I want to know what kind of distillery they're setting up over there.
I saw that.
It's
Putting that up.
it makes things. I teach a fashion class, so we thought we could incorporate it in that. Some people think we're going to be making their T-shirts for them, but we're not.
Well, if you can generate some revenue, why not?
Well, because we don't really know exactly what we're doing, we kind of have to get ourselves set up and get our students trained before we can go into business. So, but it makes a lot of stuff. So we're going to see how that goes.
First in line.
Mr. Lynch also asked for $15,025.20 for additional band uniforms, and we recommended partial for $11,500 to that. Lynn Brown, $15,025.60 for PE equipment, and we recommended $12,000 for that, and at their discretion to buy what they needed most. Samantha Vickers, optic heart rate monitors, we recommended that in full. Also, weight room equipment, we recommended that in full. And Mariah Dorfner, a planetary mixer, we recommended that in full. That's to make the dough and all the cake batters, mashed potatoes, and all that, so you don't have to do it in 15 KitchenAid mixers. You can do it all in one big thing. Now the distillers.
Yes.
I questioned them. I said, "Why do you need two?" And one was for biology and one was for chemistry. And we went round and round and round and round and round about it. So we decided to do Mr. Price's distiller for the whole science department at $3,200. And then we'll just go ahead and skip to Miss Carter's. We didn't recommend the distiller for hers, but we did recommend the autoclave, the analytical balance, which would total $10,679 of her grant for that. Then back Stingle wanted 2 iPad carts, and we recommended those. Also, AP Lit supplemental reading, we recommended that. Poland, we partially did his, and what we did with band uniforms, we took a percentage of how much they wanted and how much we gave them, and we applied that same percentage to the show choir costumes so that it would be equitable. So that's why $4,250 to the arranging and licensing rights for music, and $3,750 for the show choir costumes. Jeremy Green, AP or ag equipment, we recommend $13,000 to be used at his discretion for what he denoted. Already did the distiller. And Krista Crawford, boom side lighting, $1,400. The last two we did not recommend, and the reason, the one was for dance books for reading, and last year they wanted some for English, and we didn't give them, or we didn't recommend them because we didn't know if they were on state approved reading list. We didn't know about these either, and I told her, if you can get that to me before we voted to recommend, that we could do that, but she didn't. So we're going to suggest maybe the Media Center can use their funds to purchase these books for her. And Mr. Shapovka, he wanted iPad carts just for his room. He's a special ed English teacher, and we're kind of shying away from just doing it for teachers. We'd rather do it for departments. And since Miss Stingle got 2, or we're recommending 2 for her, and he is a part of the English department, and she's the department chair, we figured that he could use hers. So we granted $147,000, or we're recommending to grant $147,132.76 of what we had, which is only $17.11 we didn't grant.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. So do we have a recommendation?
So moved.
Or a motion, excuse me.
Second.
Thank you. So just before questions, I guess just to give a little bit of a background and context, I feel like we should always do this, particularly for those who may be new to this. This is literally the gift that keeps giving. This was really an endowment created by a gift from the McCormick family dating back to, do you remember when?
Is the late 80s.
Late 80s. And
Yeah, when he did, the guy was Bobby McCormick, who was a farmer in
right, who was a
Summit Point area.
who was an
And
heir
he-
to the McCormick family.
to the spice.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a great grandson, I believe.
And so he had left a gift to the Jefferson County High School. And it has generated, obviously, it depends upon annual earnings, but the last it's generated, what, roughly 100 and, I mean, it does vary year to year.
Well, it used to vary a lot more, but then they put it in a foundation so that it would stay more stable.
Stable. Mm-hmm. So
And so it's been about 140,000 for the past couple of
Yeah.
years.
And obviously, that's a great gift to Jefferson High School. We did years ago, I can't remember exactly when, Mr. Cable, probably 6 years ago or so, maybe even longer, 8, visit with the attorney, since, when this gift was first given, we had one high school, and then when we opened a second high school, we did visit with the attorneys for the estate of whether the gift could be expanded to include both high schools, and the view of the estate attorneys at the time was that it was a restricted gift, and so it has remained that way. And obviously Jefferson High benefits greatly from it, and we're very, very fortunate to have it, and we appreciate your stewardship over managing this. I know it's not easy on the inside, but obviously it also creates, not intentionally, but some disparity that in terms of the availability of funds for Washington High School, and something that we've struggled with for years on how to address as a board. Not sure we've come up with satisfactory answers, but I know the board will continue to be mindful of that. So with that as background, any questions or comments?
The impetus for the gift, Bobby McCormick and Ed McDonald, who some of you may remember, walked in the hallways at Jefferson every day. Both of them had heart problems, and they couldn't walk outside, especially in the summertime, and it was too cold in the wintertime, so they walked the halls in Jefferson, and that's what brought all this about.
I did not know that tidbit, Mr. Cable, but obviously that probably couldn't happen today, but we're darn glad it did.
We'd be more than happy to name the next one the Sudeth Grant for Washington High School.
You know, I'm a little hard of hearing out of that ear.
I just had a question as far as any of the iPads and whatnot that are on here. Have those have gone through technology to make sure that?
Yes, everything goes through technology. We don't do anything without Todd Chickaricki's
Wow,
blessing.
that is
And she does it just like that.
music.
And then the only other question I have is, when you're looking at all these, some of the things obviously you use, and then you're not gonna, obviously that freshman T-shirt or a pen, those are gonna kind of disappear. But do you feel like we keep good track? I'm thinking about the heart rate monitors. Obviously they go out of style, or they have to be upgraded or whatever, and you're ordering a certain number of those. How do we track that stuff to make sure that, did we get our bang for our buck? Do we still have it within the system that we can, other teachers could possibly borrow it? How do we?
They're required to write an evaluation, and within the grant, there are goals and things that they have to write as how they're going to use them and how many students will be affected and all of that. And then at the end, they're supposed to write an evaluation of how they're used and how it benefited them. And that's right now, that's all we have to go on. It's like with technology. Todd, gave me a list of things. This is how much it costs today. It will not cost that in July when you order it. Everything's going to change. So I'm assuming the same thing is going to happen with these heart rate monitors. We didn't ask that. We just, I mean, they have locked cages and keep things under wraps. We try to tell people what we have so that it's available to everybody that's there. It's a lot of stuff.
Ralph, does maintenance maintain that sort of thing after we acquire it? Is that how it goes? Or does that have to the fire companies and their ambulance people and that, do they check them out?
Like what?
Like the heart monitor?
Oh, the heart rate.
Yes.
No, maintenance doesn't do anything with heart rate monitors at this point.
I'm trying to look here at the grant. It's a Power Plus pack, a Healthometer digital scale. To update, to use in the process of testing and measuring the components of fitness within the goals for the fitness gram test.
These aren't the AEDs.
No.
These aren't the AEDs. This is something different.
This is just to help them to do, they're specifically designed to measure student performance and other components needed to calculate components of fitness. For example, students' body fat percentage to calculate the VO2 max.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, then vote is on approving the recommendations for the annual McCormick Grant for fiscal year 2018-19, or academic year, 2018-19. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Ms. Schwartz, thank you.
Thank you. Happy summer.
Yeah, happy summer. Madam Superintendent, item G, approval to post a Board of Education digital recorder position.
Yes, sir. This is a stipend for the recording, editing, and posting of board meetings. As you know, we had separate contracts with different organizations. We had one with Mr. Perk's company for recording, editing, and posting those, and another with Sandy Spinagel's company for organizing the board meetings, getting all of the recognitions, getting the certificates done, greeting those people, getting them. And the board meeting is the only place where they serve two different functions, one on this side and one on the other side. So we peeled off simply that little piece of the position and the funding that went with that into a separate stipend. But that needs to go before the board.
So the board may want to look at this, provide some input on thinking about it differently, but we should, to get to a discussion, we should have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So, thoughts?
No, this is just for the TV monitoring of this, or not monitoring.
Of just this board meeting.
Just
Yes,
board
sir.
meetings,
And
yeah.
so what's the responsibility? I mean, what do you actually do?
Just recording this board meeting and editing it and posting it to both the website and our television station.
How do you do that and stay awake at the same time?
On nights like tonight, I would imagine it's difficult, but sometimes they're more exciting than others.
Would it be possible to turn this position into some sort of internship for one of the TV studio students over at Washington High School?
Those students would still have to be supervised. An adult would still have to be with them with the equipment, and I don't know that we have someone. I suppose that is a possibility. I could discuss that with Mr. Perks. That was not his recommendation based on the technical aspects of that position.
Do we know the cost of this stipend?
Yes, sir. It is it was $3,000. per year.
for roughly 24 board meetings.
Yes, sir. Plus special meetings.
So it's not per meeting, that's basically, it's a
It
flat.
is per, it was a per meeting, and
Oh, okay.
it added up to.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah. I say, I might apply.
it's not 3,000, it's, what's hold on.
Right.
You're gonna make me do the math, aren't you?
No, you're good.
No.
Don't worry about it.
I'm gonna do it.
You're good, you're good. Don't worry about it.
I know, I've got a calculator right here. It's probably on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little over 3,000. Actually, it is a little over 3,000.
Have we got a person in place to continue that at Washington?
We're working on that because they have a teaching license for that. And while we have great applicants who have knowledge of the television studio, they're not necessarily people with teaching licenses, so they have to at least be certified as substitutes, which require them to take a class, which they're not excited
Particularly if I
about.
get a two-way mic. Sorry.
That's okay, sir. Short attention span theater.
So, okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
That Rob doesn't leave.
I would like to turn that into a motion.
Yeah.
You better hurry up because he's leaving.
Yeah, you better hurry up. He may already be exiting the building.
out the door.
He's got his trunk packed already.
No.
Okay, so with the motion is to, on approval of, to post for a digital recorder position.
It's not a position, it's just a stipend.
Oh, I'm sorry, a stipend. Well, okay,
List as position.
yeah.
I know.
All
That
right.
was incorrect.
Hearing no further recommendations, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. There you
So
go,
last
Hans.
thing
Hans,
tonight.
that's the last thing you get for a while.
Yeah. Perhaps ever. Enjoy. Don't have to be in two places at once. This is probably the only time. I would like to recognize a special guest that we have with us for tonight. One of the things that you may have noticed in our human resources postings, probably the most important position that we fill during a school year is that of a principal. They're responsible for the leadership of the building, the safety of the students within it, the morale and support of all of the teachers. And we were both very, very excited and, quite frankly, enormously relieved to have had such an outstanding candidate. But I would like for everyone to join me in recognizing, if you could stand up, Miss Carrie Mahoney, who is, as of tonight, the principal of South Jefferson Elementary School. Some of you may not be aware of the Miss Mahoney's long and storied history at South Jefferson, which includes a 20-year teaching career there. She was the first inaugural class of our exemplary leadership program that we began in this district to sort of grow our own internal leaders. And since then, she's gone on to become a mentor for other rising exemplary leaders. And quite frankly, we could not have asked for a more outstanding candidate. She was the unanimous, hands-down choice of every member of the committee. And it is a joy, and I will sleep better at night knowing that South Jefferson is in her hands. So if you have anything you'd like to
Yeah, I would just like to
say.
thank you for the opportunity. It has been a long journey, but I'm glad to take this next step. And I want to recognize Rick Jenkins, who was a fantastic mentor and now a wonderful friend, who has helped me to get prepared for this step that I'm excited about, but also it's a whole different ballgame when you're now in charge, and I look forward to that challenge. But I would like to recognize my parents. This is my mom, Diana Wesley, and my dad, Alan Mahoney, and without them, literally, this wouldn't be happening. I would just like to recognize them for how much they've always believed in me and had me push to the dreams that I had, and I just really appreciate their support. So thank you.
And the fact that you sat through a 2-hour board meeting for
Yeah.
your girl,
There you go.
thumbs up. Kudos to you.
Well, we want to,
Kudos to you.
she's in training,
She's-
okay?
She
It
is
won't
in
be the
training.
last.
She is in training.
Ms. Mahoney, I've, I think Mr. Jenkins has had to leave, but, I thought you'd been doing the job for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And to your parents, I would say that I've had the privilege to know your daughter both as a parent in South Jefferson and as a member of the schools. You've done a heck of a job. She is. All of our schools are great places, but boy, South Jefferson, thanks to her, and I know she's had some support, does a terrific job with our kids. So thank
She
you.
loves the school, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
We come from a family of teachers, and so it's been a multi-generation thing, and we know what goes on behind the scenes as far as the hard work, the money. I remember the first year that she was a teacher, we spent she was not pleased with the library. And everybody that we knew, we started haunting yard sales. And we probably bought 200 books over the summer for her to have her to increase them. And this was before she even started.
Yeah.
So it was to improve the library at South Jefferson.
Well,
So I know those behind the scenes love that she has for the school.
It's a family business,
Yes,
that's for
it
sure.
is.
It's a family business.
And I know we have one board member who is a little bit displeased by this because, Mrs. Skinner tried for years to recruit Ms. Mahoney away from South Jefferson.
Unsuccessfully.
So, Carrie, you won.
My question is, were you in charge of discipline? Is that why he knew you so well?
Yeah.
Never mind, you don't have to answer that.
Discretion is the better part of valor. Well done. Well done. See, she's a leader in all aspects. In all aspects.
Yeah, she sure
Absolutely.
is. So, we anticipate an executive session.
We do anticipate an executive session,
Okay.
but the final thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we do that,
Yes, sir.
we would be delighted to honor, speaking of Mr. Perks, there he is. So if you please.
I would be more than happy to. We would like to both thank and congratulate Mr. Rob Perks on his recent well-deserved retirement. He served
I think
Jefferson
this is
County
like the
Schools
second
for...
or third time he's retired.
Yes.
Third retirement.
I think it is his third retirement.
Yes,
And we are happy for all of our guests. Your reward for sitting through 2 hours of a board meeting is to join us for a quick piece of retirement cake for you and Sherilyn to say thank you so much for your many years of service to Jefferson County Schools. We're very blessed to have you.
Speech. So I don't know what to say.
Cut the cake.
Yeah, cut the cake. Absolutely.
Pass it around. So, well, thank you very, very much. I really don't know what to say. It's kind of a bittersweet moment for me because I've always loved what I do, still do. And just being around all the great folks at the central office all these years, it's been kind of cool. And but anyway, I've always loved what I do. I hope that you can continue the video program out at the high school
We rebuilt the studio, and so it's a good facility. I hope that you can make use of it out there. And just keep that going. As like 15 years ago, it was George Lucas who made the statement that any high school student that graduates from high school today and cannot edit video will be considered illiterate. So, because that's where we get all of our information now. We watch the video. So anyway, thank you to everybody. This is great. I'll put this on the dashboard of the big machine.
And Rob, you have done so much to inspire students in that studio. We've been blessed to have that resource and to have your leadership in impacting so many students. So thank you. As we discussed earlier, you're going to be greatly missed, but this retirement should stick, and it's incredibly well deserved.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get a picture.
What? A picture?
Yeah. So we'll take a quick 5-minute recess.
Can I make one comment really quickly?
Oh, please, yes.
I was just proud of our Jefferson County staff. We had some great representation on Saturday up at Spring Mills High School for the PEIA meeting.
Oh, good.
Oh,
So-
really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They said it was the largest crowd that they've had so far, and there were some great representatives from Jefferson County.
Oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know that.
And I would just
Janet, you gotta
thank
look at the
to
camera.
K-Kids who gave us the certificates of kindness for Dr. Gibson and the Board of Education.
That's awesome.
And Mr. Cable and I got to go very quickly in the evening when they had their presentation, and they are definitely impacting the lives of Jefferson Community Ministries especially. And it's been neat to watch that program. So.